I didn't see the notice. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we're at 12:30. I'm going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are privileged to meet on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Squamish and St'át'imc Nations. And just before we move on to agenda approval, for those who are curious as to what the red numbering is, that is the order in which we will be going through the this agenda, as we are accommodating the auditors who will be joining us at 1 o'clock. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to a recommendation for the agenda.
That the agenda.
Go ahead. That the agenda of this meeting be approved.
Thank you, April. The seconder for that.
I can second that.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any objections? Okay, seeing and hearing none, and then we can move on. It brings us to 2. We have a recommendation on some minutes. Anyone prepared to do that?
That the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held on May 10th, 2023 be adopted.
I'm happy to
April.
second that.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any objections? Okay, seeing and hearing none, then that's accepted. Were there any trustee items? Okay. Not seeing anything, we'll move on to item 5, information items, the 3-year financial plan. And that's Danielle and Elena.
Yeah, so Elena, our finance director here, is going to provide a quick update on a new ministry requirement that we have. So she has, I think, a few slides that she's going to share with us. Let's go ahead, Elena.
Sure. Thank you, Danielle.
Oh, that's good.
I muted you. I muted you.
Yeah, I understand this.
I muted her. She's fine now.
Oh, should I mute myself? Or
No, I muted you. Go ahead.
Still got feedback.
She just unmuted herself. Don't touch, just talk into the microphone, please.
Okay. Let me share the screen. The multi-year financial plan is a new report that is required by the ministry now, and the district will present its first multi-year financial plan in September, present to the board in September 2023. In 2021, so here I will provide background, purpose, and development process of this report. And I just wanted to mention that in 2021, the ministry directed all districts to start developing new policies, accumulated operating surplus policy and financial planning and reporting policy, which district already had at that time, but we updated them. And also 2 new reports were part of that direction, financial statement discussion analysis and multi-year financial plan. So the only item outstanding in all those new requirements is multi-year financial plan. The district has already started working on it, and the report will be presented in September on the board meeting. So the background for this report is that multi-year financial plan is required by the financial planning and reporting policy. District policy is 701. Also, financial planning and reporting policy itself is a component of a broader provincial framework, like framework for enhancing student learning, and also district strategic plans, operating plans, and education plans. So also other policy alignments include 5-year capital plan, accumulated operating surplus policy, and also this report is related to financial statement and discussion analysis report. So the purpose of this policy and report related to this policy is to align funding to our strategic priorities. This is the main purpose of this report. Also, it may enhance operational effectiveness to support student learning and promote transparency and accountability of the district, how it spent its funds. Also, the district will be required to disclose to the public longer-term financial plans and financial outlook of the future. So how the district is going to develop this report, how we're planning to work on this report. So in the district has already started a consultation with the ministry and their professional organization, like British Columbia Association of School Board Officials. A consultation on how to prepare that. The ministry provided guidelines. There is no template, but there are guidelines. What content should it include? What main items should be part of this report? And BC ASBA also during those meetings and annual general meetings provided some directions and collaboration with other school districts, how other school districts are going to do that. Also, some school districts have already prepared those reports last year. So Admin Council looked at the first draft in June and developed a timeline how we're going to work further to have it complete by September. We allocated responsibilities, who does what. And the plan is that in August, we will refine all the estimates and present to the board and submit to the ministry in September. I don't know if you have questions, but I wanted to point some questions that I may anticipate. First of all, this multi-year financial plans that for us, it will be 2023-2026 financial plan, covering 3 years, 2023-24, which is by law, and 24-25 and 25-26 are 2 projected years. So this multi-year financial plan does not require board approval. Only by law requires board approval. 2 years to other years are projections only, and based on some assumptions that would go into whatever we know now, what would go into revenue and expenses. The ministry provided the guidelines. The ministry provided, they developed a customized tool for each district who wanted to use it for operating grants based on their enrollment that we submit as our enrollment projections to the ministry. So this is a help from the ministry, guidelines and those operating grant tools. And approval from the board not required. However, the board required to review the report before it will be sent to the submitted to the ministry. The biggest alignment with other policies is the alignment with our strategic framework of enhancing student learning. This is the biggest alignment, that we have to clearly state how we are supporting our priorities and how funds are allocated according to our priorities. This is the biggest alignment. And yes, in September, we will show you the draft that you will review in September. If you have any further questions?
Can I ask you to stop screen sharing? So I can't see everyone when we're sharing the screen. Thank you. Were there any questions? No, I don't see anything or hear anything, so I think that is everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can move on. Next, we have up our Indigenous Education targeted funding budget.
Rebecca, do you want me to start and you can just add?
Sure, I'm just looking. Are we just looking at one motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And that will be that one will go to the open board meeting.
Yeah.
As well.
Pete, did you wanna
Yeah.
speak to it at all?
Sure. So over the last year, I've been working really closely with Karen La Rochelle and also our North and South Indigenous committees, as well as Indigenous Council, to set up the budget for next year for targeted funds. And just some highlights from some changes. So our per student funding has increased. The ministry gave us extra funding, which is awesome. It was previously 1,565 per student, and it's been increased to 1,710 per student. So that's very welcomed. Altogether, the increase is $145 per student. And we got in targeted funds. So I'll go through a few highlights for the North and the South. For the North, the estimated number of Indigenous students in the North for next year has decreased by 18. So that is a big decrease. It used to be 283 students, and now it's 265 students. But thankfully, we did have an increase in per student rates, so that's good. And another change is across the North and the South. The North has some very well-deserved wage increases for their Indigenous support workers. There was a wage increase for a cultural language worker, as well as the new Indigenous advocate position is added into there for next year. And all of the positions in the North are currently filled, which is excellent. On the South, for the South, the estimated number of Indigenous students in the South has increased by 2 approximately. The student number last year was 289 students, and now it's 291 students. So similar to the North, the South budget includes well-deserved wage increases for their Indigenous support workers, a cultural and language worker, an outreach worker, and a language worker. And I know that Chris may want to speak a little bit about what we're doing with shared learnings and the Indigenous Success Advisor. So, or unless you want me to, I'm happy to.
No, I'm happy. I think we may have mentioned at the last board meeting when we were doing the approval of the P1, we get it wrong, but the first
Preliminary.
budget. And again, just thanking the board for their continued support of education in our district, and to note that these monies here for target funds, represent us just a portion of all the monies that go into education in our district, but specifically with the shared learnings and our success advisor positions, the board approved to hold those into operating, because the shared learnings, for example, isn't just targeted for students with ancestry. It's that support for ensuring that we're continuing to evolve in our understanding of and incorporation of Indigenous ways of knowing and doing across our district and for all students. And the learning is for all educators. So previous actually came out of targeted funds. And when we really think about the work we're trying to do with Indigenous education and in decolonizing the entire curriculum and the system, it just makes sense that a board so much in favor of and in support of Truth and Reconciliation would approve those monies to come out of the regular work that we do every day, which allows for the targeted funding to pay for, as you see by the numbers, again, that increase for workers with a little bit left over for other supports in the district. So super proud of that work and proud to be part of that district that takes that on. It was very, I shouldn't speak for members of the committee, I'm just a guest. So Rebecca, maybe you can share, the councils and the committees, response to hearing that the board was taking on those costs.
Sure, I can jump in there for a second. So I don't hear much feedback from the committee, but for the Indigenous Education Council, we met last week, and everybody was very, very happy to hear that that the district is investing in our Indigenous learners, and then I also thought that we could do a better job of expressing that publicly. We do receive targeted funding, that goes to, directly to our Indigenous learners. However, that's just a portion of what we out of the district invest in. So I think that's about it. I have. Danielle, was there more?
Yeah, and just to like express, because of what the committee was saying, they actually advocated for, the district to pay for it, and we thought, yeah, it makes sense that, it's not just Indigenous learners. So we can say thank you to them for advocating for that, because really it was, them who requested, and we followed through with that. Mhm.
I guess I can add one more piece. Happy to hear that all positions have been filled, because we're often sitting at a surplus because we can't fill all the EA positions. And I believe, anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that both the north and the south have filled all the vacancies.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're all filled too.
Yeah, perfect.
Rebecca, could I ask a couple of questions if we have time?
Yep, sure, go ahead.
So just so I can better understand, these employees are not directly employees of the SD48. They are each employed differently by, can you just fill in the blank for me so that I could understand how the structure is set up?
Sure,
Oh,
the
sure.
north,
So you go ahead, Rebecca. No, Rebecca
Okay.
knows it.
the north is managed through Lilwat. So they're employees of Lilwat, and then Squamish Nation manages the south, and they fall under their respective policies and such. And I think that this was a part of it was so they aren't unionized and can't be bumped out of their positions.
They cannot be bumped out of the positions. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're employed, they're working full-time in our buildings, but we are not the employer, and any wage increases for these people have to be looked at annually through this being brought to the board. Is that correct to say?
No, I think generally each of the employers work with that, but the budget has to goes through committee to council to the board. So if there are any increases that are put in, they work with whatever budget they have, and then ultimately we do approve, but generally it's proposed to us.
Okay.
Is that right, Danielle?
Yeah, I mean, some of the staff actually, they work for the First Nation 12 months out of the year, and because they're only working in the schools for 10 months, we pay for the 10-month portion. So their employment contracts are totally separate to ours, and then we kind of have to negotiate with them how much we're covering for benefits and all of that stuff.
I think what I'm really wondering about is probably a bigger discussion for today, but the crux of what I'm wondering is the way that this is set up. I mean, maybe there's no other way to possibly do it, but is it the best way to support these employees? And one of the things that I've noticed, through the years of the various recognition events, sometimes these people get missed for years of service because they are not our employees. And so it's just one of those things, like, I'm just wondering, is not being part of our unionized workforce a detriment, or is it, are there other benefits for them that make sense? So I think it's a bigger discussion that I'm really, really curious about. And maybe we can just put that on an agenda for another day, so that I feel like it would be helpful for me to better understand, or maybe that's an education session topic for the future. But I would like to better understand kind of the structure of how this is being done, and if it's the very best way that we can do it for the employees' sake.
Okay, I would just add a couple pieces there. I know in past many of the support workers were paid a lot less than other EAs. Now it's definitely far more equitable. It's even what they're receiving. They also didn't receive benefits in the past, and now they're included in benefit plans. And because they're administered by the Indigenous communities, if they are status, they're actually working tax exempt as well. Whereas if they were employees of the district, they wouldn't qualify. So there are definitely some benefits to that.
That's helpful for sure to understand. I thought there might be pieces that, you know, the structure may be set up in a certain way because there is a benefit to the employees. And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, if we could be doing better for them, then it would be nice to know how things might be improved. But yeah, larger topic for another day. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. Any other questions?
you have a
Seeing and
question?
hearing.
I did,
Oh.
but I have a question, but I think Rebecca kind
think
of answered.
April had a
I
question.
think
You're
that
good.
what maybe what Celeste was trying to say was the rationale for this structure, but Rebecca helped with her, you know, like there must be a rationale why it was established in this way. And I think that that's what Celeste is asking. I'm hoping that's what you're asking, Celeste.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. If there aren't any other questions or comments, there is a recommendation that is there. One is prepared.
I can do that. That the Finance Committee recommend the Board of Education approve the 2023-2024 Indigenous Education Targeted Funding Budget as presented.
And I can second that.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Cynthia. Any objections? I guess I just have one question first. Would it just be singular budget? Because generally when we're making these motions, we say north and south targeted funding budget. So I'm just.
Yeah.
for
It should say,
housekeeping
budgets.
for budget. Okay.
Well, it doesn't, it could be, actually, it could be just singular because it's one pot of money really, but
Mhm.
we just split it into two.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't hear or see any objections. I guess we can move on. So item 3 was the 5-year capital plan, and we have 7 minutes before the auditors join us.
Got about a minute and 10.
This probably looks very similar to what we did last year. So this is the 2023 edition of our 2024-2025 and 5-year submission to our annual capital plan. And we are putting forward again the as our number one and only priority in the district is an expansion project linked to a seismic upgrade at Howe Sound Secondary. So under the program tab, there's 2 programs identified that we will be applying under as per the ministry instructions. So one is the seismic mitigation program and the other is the addition. So we break out the project, this overall project, into seismic and into addition in the MyCap system or how they'd like to see us apply for these funds. So this year's project, we've revised the application. We've added some additional information under our project request fact sheet. And we hope that we have a very good business case again this year. So that the project sees a favorable review at the Ministry of Education. So the estimated budget for the addition on this school addition for Howe Sound Secondary, which is increasing capacity from a working capacity of 775 to 1225, is just under $49 million. So it's a very ambitious project. It's a high dollar amount. By comparison, when we break out the seismic portion alone under the reporting tab, that comes in at 32.4 million. So it's a significant project just to do the seismic mitigation without any expansion. So from our business case perspective, it makes a lot of sense to go for the addition project. So this is the only project that we're submitting this year. The rows beneath the submission are other projects we maintain on MyCaps, so that if our future enrollment indicates that we need to look at expansion projects at our other two elementaries in Squamish that are under pressure, they're in the tabs. They're already populated in the system. And we just keep those updated with current enrollment information so that it's a really easy transition to submitting them, say, in a future year. So we maintain those on our project list. And again, this is just speaking to the major capital request. We have another minor capital request submission coming up at the end of September. And that's all I got.
Okay, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that sure is.
Rebecca?
The 775 to 1225, is that student count or what is that?
Yeah, that would be capacity. So it's current capacity, working capacity for Howe Sound Secondary. So is 775. That's determined by looking at all classrooms that are available and other spaces that could be used for education purposes in the facility. And we're expanding that to 1225. Now on our project request fact sheet, it breaks out the number of classrooms that would be. So it's additional classrooms, it's additional capacity we're building into the school. And this plan, as we've always done since it was first submitted many years ago, includes bringing the alternate ed program into Howe Sound Secondary. So this factors in that all students would be included within the same facility. They would have their own area within the facility, but it is inclusive for all students.
We should also mention that it's also inclusive of the plan, for the eventual reconfiguration project, right? For Don Ross to be 6-2
Grade
6 to 8.
reconfiguration.
And then you'll have 9 to 12 at the one high school. Hence the need for the space. And the hope too is that it'll also relieve the pressures on our elementary schools. So we think the one project put forward is very well thought out, very sound. And really the expansion is a fraction, a quarter or a fifth of the actual cost, which is mainly seismic mitigation. And again, we're really pushing on student safety. And, you know, we recognize stresses in the rest of the system on districts that are experiencing explosive growth. And we know they will get probably priority, but student safety is so very important to all of us. And we know that in the province, I think they're at about 40% to go of sites across the province that have not yet had their seismic upgrade. So we made a very intentional, as we did last year, decision to put this front and center. So we're very hopeful, but we'll have to wait and see. Thanks for letting me follow up without going to the questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, be mindful, we have 2 minutes before the auditors come. Celeste, I see your hands up, and April, I saw yours as well. So Celeste, go ahead.
I would actually like to ask my question after the auditors are finished, because it's going to take more than 2 minutes.
Okay, April, do you have a quick one, or do you want to hold off
Just a
till
quick,
later?
if this was a yes and we get this, how quickly? Like, what's the timeline looking like? 10
Yeah.
years, 5 years? 20
It's
years?
okay, so we would have the announcement next spring, so in April of 2024. So that triggers the project development phase. So from 24 till occupying the building is about a 5-year process. So we're looking at 2029 for occupancy, potential occupancy.
Long time.
Yeah,
If approved.
So every year we don't get it, it makes.
it pushes it, yeah.
Thank God.
I'll wait
Okay.
till auditors.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
We can actually probably, like, the auditors can wait. I think they're still waiting for some people. So you guys can go ahead with your questions.
I'm here, Danielle. I don't know if I'm supposed to be, but I'm here.
It's a public meeting in any case, so. You're doing the presentation, Donna?
Yes.
Okay, are we waiting on anyone else, or? Will it just be you
No, I
joining
think
us?
it's just going to be me today, I think.
Okay, then I think we can move to that part of our agenda.
Sorry, I was just closing my door in my office.
Okay. Is this the financial statement audit plan?
Yes, and so I just wanted, I think I have about 10 minutes in total just to talk about the audit plan and the audit planning process. So I believe that there was a document distributed to everyone that talked about the audit plan, and just in the interest of time, just because we have limited time, I wasn't going to go through it page by page, but maybe just talk in general about what the audit process is, and then maybe open it, talk about what may be new or different this year, and then maybe open it up to some questions from the trustees. And so we are in the process of planning our audit for the school district's fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. So just ending in about 16 days. And so the audit process, I would say, is divided into 3 distinct phases. And so the first phase is planning, where we have discussions with management. We talk about what's gone on during the year and sort of to be aware of any changes or anything that's new and exciting. We go through some of your processes and systems to see what changes there may have been. And then we look at what risks there are in the audit process, and then design how we're going to respond to those risks. So that's kind of the planning stage. And that's what we do typically before the year end. Then there's the execution stage of the audit, which happens in August, where we do that in this new era in a hybrid kind of approach, where we will spend some time coming out to the school district to do our testing based upon a sample of transactions and balances, and then we'll spend some time doing the audit virtually as well. And that's really delving deep into actually doing the testing. So rather than just doing the planning and asking some general questions, doing specific testing of transactions. So we'll be doing that in August. And then the last phase is the reporting phase, where we report back to both management and the board on the results of our audit. And so that will happen in September. Where we will talk about the draft financial results, and also talk about any specific findings that come out of the audit process. And we'll do that mid-September in conjunction with the board meeting to approve the financial statements. And then the statements are due to the province at the end of September. So that's kind of the big approach. So right now we're just in the planning phase. I think the 2 things that are new and different this year from the prior year is, one is related to a new auditing standard that's in place for this year, and it's called CAS 315. And it's a new standard related to how we do our risk assessments. And basically, I think the biggest impacts that we're finding on audits is that it makes us delve a little bit deeper into your IT systems, how your different systems interact with one another, and then have us as auditors assess where that may lead to increased risks, and then think about how we would design our approach maybe differently because of any increased risks. So we're in the process of doing that IT assessment right now, and then we will change any procedures that we need to as a result of that when we do our year-end work in August. So that's a new audit standard. There is also a new accounting standard that's applicable for this year for school districts and all other public sector entities, and that's related to asset retirement obligations. And so that standard says if you have property where you know that in conjunction with that property, you're going to need to do work related to remediation on that property, then you shall accrue that liability in your financial statements and not wait until you actually do that work to recognize that liability. And so what it means is that there is a process that all school districts and all public sector entities are going through right now, where you're assessing all of your properties. For school districts in particular, it relates to the liabilities related to asbestos in particular, but could be other liabilities as well. Looking at the properties that you have, what you would need to do to remediate any type of asbestos, and then calculate what that liability would be in your financial statements. So the province has issued guidance on how to do those calculations, and as part of the audit, as auditors, we need to look at those calculations and assess the appropriateness of the liability that the school district has calculated. So again, we're looking at that right now as part of our planning process, but we'll be doing the testing as part of the year-end process. So that's kind of the big picture. I've talked a lot, but maybe, I don't know, Danielle, if you wanted me to cover something else as part of the process, but maybe then, and then open up any questions that anyone might have.
No, I think you did a good job explaining that. So thank you. There's some questions here already, it looks like.
Yeah, I saw that Lisa's hand up.
Yeah, so those outstanding potential liabilities with the properties, looking to you over here. So would that also be including our seismic issues? No, it's just remedial work on asbestos, sort of. Okay.
Yeah, so that is something that we actually started doing the journal entries for that the first time this year. The ministry has provided us extensive direction and values to use to estimate how much the cost should be. So we booked, I think, our first one for, I think it was a third quarter. Elena, correct me if I'm, is that correct? Second quarter? Okay. So they recently updated their estimates for that, but they're giving the same direction to all school districts, and we're following the direction the province is giving us on how to treat that stuff.
Okay. And follow-up question. So when we're looking at the projects that you just presented a few moments ago, some of that remedial work would be, I would assume, encompassed within, or are they separate?
It'd be separate, so that what we would do for a major capital project is, if it was a major renovation, this is project that we're proposing is actually a demolition and then build new. So there wouldn't be any remedial work to remove asbestos containing materials or other hazardous materials within the building. However, if we were doing a renovation that involved reconfiguring existing spaces, we undertake a hazardous materials inspection, and we have a report on that prior to commencing construction. We know where we have to address those issues within the facility, and then we build new after removing any of those hazardous materials. So it's a component of the project, but it's separate to this asset review with respect to asbestos specifically under the program that the ministry is talking about.
Okay, thank you very much.
Were there any other questions for Donna? Hey, I'm not seeing or hearing any, Donna, and I thank you very much for coming to present us with the plan.
Sure, I could have maybe just one more question from me.
Okay.
Is if from a board perspective, if there's any kind of significant transactions or other things that you might be aware of that you think would impact the audit that you don't see when you look at the report, or if there's anything in particular that you would like us to look at as part of the audit process.
From me, there's nothing that I can think of. I'm not sure if anyone else has anything. It doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Okay.
Just to ask a question,
Well,
just in case.
Yeah, no, that's good. So is that it then, Danielle?
I think so. Anything else from you, Donna? No, you're good.
No, I think we'll have like when we're actually have completed our audit work and have the final reporting on the results, we'll have more things to talk about.
Yeah, so I mean, Donna and I will be working together through the summer while they're doing the audit. And then you'll hear from Donna again in September when she has her audit report. So. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Donna.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
With that, we can go back to our 5-year capital plan, and I think Celeste, you had a question?
Yeah, so I know, we've talked at great length about this, and the report that you produced for us last year was super helpful. If any of the newer trustees haven't seen it, it would be good to go back to. It was probably June of 2022 that we talked about that report. And so in the report, the idea of portables being put on the Howe Sound property was part of it, if my memory serves correctly. And so I think just for, I know that there's staff and parents who are following this, and for trustees as well. I think just to get a better understanding of what to expect in terms of if and when we may see portables at Howe Sound Secondary, if and when, whether or not the ministry approves what we're asking for, we may see a shift in the grades at Don Ross and Howe Sound, and then the elementary schools as a result. So, there's been quite a lot of discussion and some expectations built up. And I think just speaking to that, it was unfortunate that it wasn't approved for this year. And I think the expectation was that we would be moving forward by now, but here we are, we're at the mercy of the ministry and we need to wait until that funding is approved. So if anyone's able to speak to that, it would be appreciated.
What? Do you?
Well, no, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
I thank you for that opportunity, Celeste, because it has been on the radar for a while, and we shared some possible moves moving forward. But I think what we've learned is we want to be again, we want to play fair. We want to be as transparent as possible. We collectively and I, as superintendent, don't want to have students put in portables unless there is absolute need. I don't think that serves teachers or families very well at all. And I'm not supportive of those kinds of political moves. I think that end of the day, we've established what our need is. We've been very clear, and again, thanks to Ian for the hard work in putting together the proposal. And when and if we do get to a stage, if we get to a stage where we're considering portables, it will be because of need for placement, and we'll ensure there's clear communication with all families and the rest of the district for that. But I'm hoping to avoid that, of course. I'm hoping that the ministry will step up and step forward and support us in our plan. I think it's a very fair. I don't think we're being overly ambitious. I think we're really clear on what our need is, and again, putting together, joining the notion of expanding the school with a seismic upgrade makes financial sense, makes timing sense. So you're not duplicating services and workers and all those pieces. And again, we have shown how it alleviates pressure on our Squamish area elementary schools, which will avoid the possible necessity for portables on those properties. So I'm supportive of us just moving forward with the plan ahead, and only placing portables where there's need, and hopefully we can avoid as much as that as possible as we await the ministry's decisions.
I have follow-up questions, but I don't want to jump the queue, so I'll just put myself back in the queue and let you tell me when it's time to talk.
I'll put my microphone back on. I think Lisa, and then April, and then back to you, Celeste.
My question was going to be around, I had two questions, so I'll jump to the back too, Celeste, if you like. But what happens if we don't get the funding? What's the so it's the contingency plan, where are we at? I wasn't here last June.
Yeah,
So
so just to the sake of new members, so every year we do a needs analysis on our buildings. We take consideration projections. We look at the number of classrooms that we're going to need. We have scenario A, B, and C. So we absolutely have contingency plans if we need to expand. We have timelines for bringing in portables if necessary. So again, we're very much understand the length of time a new construction takes. So, you know, when we look at our projections to the best of our knowledge, we know that we've got some room for a little while longer, but as things grow and change and we get our more actual enrollment numbers, we will absolutely be sharing any of those pressures and sharing any decisions to move forward with portables. I'll also mention that we also have mechanisms in place when we need to declare a school full. Coming from Metro, I'm very familiar with that process. It's not something we've actually had to do in this district on a regular basis or very much at all. But again, there are a number of options available to the board and to us when we determine how to best meet the needs of placement in the district. And again, we'll be fully transparent with that process should we get there.
If I could add, so our crunch time on status quo, assuming that we don't get the project in, our enrollment stays as it is, we don't do the reconfiguration, our crunch time at House on Secondary is 2026. So we've got a few years to plan for that coming forward. We hope we have a project approved prior to that, and we will have to address the student needs and where we're going to place those students during construction. So there are a number of logistics, and that all comes up under project development phase. So once the ministry pulls the trigger, we start doing the project development, and that factors in all of those pieces where we're going to put the students while the building's being renovated, constructed.
Right. Okay, April, you had some?
Yeah, I'm not sure if my question probably has been answered, but I was going to ask if we can hang on for the 5 years, but presuming that we get it, can we? I mean, always the question out there is the big question is, are you going to move the elementary school grade 6s into the high school? And that's the kind of the questions that, you know, as a trustee, we would get. And it's been talked about in Sea to Sky for a number of years. I don't really know the answer if someone was to ask that, but I'm thinking what I'm hearing is that we wouldn't do that until Howe Sound expanded. Is that the truth? Is that, or would we get ourselves into an emergency situation prior to that, where the capacity of the elementary schools is such that we do have to make that decision prior?
So again, the intent is to reconfigure in Squamish to have the high school 9 to 12,
right,
and the middle school model of 6 to 8. We are hoping and planning that coincides with support from the ministry to build the school. And you know, our crystal ball, right, is cloudy, but is telling us that some of these conversations, decisions will have to be made around 2026, and we'll have to see where we're at to determine if that's feasible. I suspect it's not feasible to do grade configuration without expansion, because I'm not sure where we put those kiddos. And Don Ross, you know, it is a large school with many students, but there is still room there. And again, there's the possibility of a portable on a few of our elementary schools as necessary. And so we will again have those options available and do our best to be really clear with the public in a timely manner in which direction we need to go. And I think my assistant soup is giving me a good suggestion to, oh, of course, thank you. If I didn't make it clear before, anytime that we speak about a grade reconfiguration, that absolutely requires, and we're committed to that consultation process with the public. So before any of that would happen, we would ensure there was a robust and transparent consultation process. Thank you. Lorette, for that.
Okay, Celeste, I think it's back to you.
Thank you. Can you remind me, and I'm sorry that I don't know this off the top of my head, how many portables we have at the elementary schools in Squamish right now?
Yeah, so we have one at Valley Cliff. There is two at Garibaldi Highlands. And those are the only ones that are for our school district's use. So then at Squamish Elementary, there is a Strong Start portable on site. At a third structure, which isn't a portable, is also at Garibaldi Highlands, which is for a daycare. And then, oh, sorry, for further clarification, we do have the alternate ed program at Howe Sound Secondary, and that is in 3 portables currently. So those are in full use, but Garibaldi Highlands, I don't believe there's divisions in those portables slated for next year. Valley Cliff does need their portable. They may need another one because it is one of our schools that is under pressure. They don't need it for next year, but we're keeping track of that. Oh, and less the project information that was provided last year, Archie has that. It's in draft form for this year. It's what will be included with our request to the ministry, so it's available. It's been updated. There's a few tweaks we're going to do upon request of the ministry. They wanted us to add a few more pieces in there. So, but that is available. So any trustees that would like to review that document, it's a very detailed document. There's a ton of work that goes into it. It's our whole business case for why we're going down this road. It's comprehensive. It's good information. So anybody who wants it can get it from Archie.
I think that's great. Thank
Okay,
you.
great.
I'm sorry. Can I go ahead?
Oh, sorry, Archie said that it's been shared with trustees.
Okay, amazing. So thank you so much for that, Ian. It sounds like what we're hearing is that there are not actually many portables in use in Squamish at this time. And I think what I'm feeling is that it would be unfortunate to have to invest a lot in portables in this community, you know, before investing in sort of making this shift towards this expansion of the high school and the grade reconfiguration, which has been talked about for such a very long time, and maybe beneficial for other reasons also. And the other question that I had was around the probability of, you know, those other 2 projects that are listed. I think the second one was for expansion of Squamish Elementary. What is the probability of that being approved by the ministry before expansion of Howe Sound?
Well, currently the Howe Sound project is the only one that's put forward in this year's capital plan submission. So those other projects that are identified, to use an analogy, it'd be like they're idling along in the background. So we maintain those projects so that it's not a huge undertaking to bring them forward in the event that we need them. So the elementary renovations or additions would be required if we don't do the grade reconfiguration. If we do the grade reconfiguration, the pressure is off most of our elementaries, if not all of them, for the foreseeable future. It really helps us out by going K-5 in those schools. The Valley Cliff one, it does show that it would still be under pressure even after pulling grade 6s out of Valley Cliff. However, we can adjust or find spaces within the school we may be able to alter to allow for that expansion. It's not dramatic, or we would have to add another portable. But yeah, those are just in the back.
Can they see them, Ian, or is it only us that can see them?
The ministry level, our reporting officer sees what we've got in our plan, so they can go through and review and say, they have said this in the past, like, hey, so why aren't you guys bringing forward your Myrtleford Middle School? Because there was a lot of interest in that over the years. Sadly, our numbers don't justify moving that project forward, but they see that on there in the tab and they go, what's going on with this? So they could do the same thing with the ones that are still highlighted, Valley Cliff and Squamish Elementary, and say, what is your plan for these projects? I see they're in the queue. And do you plan to move forward? And then that would be a decision, from the board and the senior team, whether we need that based on our enrollment pressures, what we're seeing coming forward. And it is contingent upon that grade reconfiguration. If that doesn't happen, then we're looking at multiple builds, at least 2, if not three, to address that growth. Whereas if this is our business case to the Minister of Education, is by focus duration, grade 9 is going into house on secondary, that reduces the overall number of builds we would have to do in our district. So it's a great business case. It's one of those things that, to us, we just have to see if when they prioritize all the projects throughout the province, they take in all the information from all the districts, and big districts in the Lower Mainland are under a lot of pressure, so they tend to get awarded the projects over us. But they will consider, they consider all of our proposals, and we think we have a plans.
So I'm sorry, I have one more question. So because it sounds like you've split apart the seismic portion of this project from the expansion portion of the project, does that actually like portion not happening, and really those things being coupled was what thing that might make it happen?
Well, yeah, so the ministry has asked us to submit them in two separate tabs. So we're following the direction of our reporting officer. And it does show that there is those B-wing blocks without expansion. So it doesn't address any of our growth issues. Again, if I go back to status quo, if we don't do anything, we don't change the grades, house on secondary is going to be bursting at the seams, say by 2026. So we need to do something there anyway. So by the ministry supporting a $32 million project for seismic upgrades only with no expansion, doesn't address our future needs and doesn't make really good economic sense. So when we look at, well, that we need to address in our district, we put the other piece of the business puzzle together where it is expansion, demolition of the B-wing, and that makes a lot more sense economically. It is a higher cost project, of course. We're looking at science wings and shops, those are expensive, but in the big picture, it's not a dramatic difference between the cost of seismically upgrading compared to the expansion. Further to the seismically upgrading, we would be seismically upgrading two of the oldest wings that are also in our facility condition index. They score the worst. Yes, we can make the facility safe so that it meets the requirements under improvements for seismic mitigation, but it doesn't address any of the other issues. It doesn't address the overall condition of those wings for upgrading to current standards. The accessibility in those wings are terrible. They're, like I say, the oldest portion. So the systems in there, electrical, HVAC, lighting, all of that stuff is old and needs upgrading. So there's other significant costs that would be rolled into that. So we would be getting very close to that, $40 million to do functional improvements as well as seismic. So I think we have a great business case to show that the seismic doesn't make sense. The expansion does. And I hope that helps to answer your question.
And Rebecca, if I may, you just stop me if you feel it's necessary. I hope that we, and I totally have total faith in what your team, in yourself, Ian, and what the whole team is doing to move this forward. But my hope is just that we will never make it too easy for them to ignore us. And while I wouldn't want to see, students in portables unnecessarily, seeing portables on that site, and for the public maybe to have to get loud about it, because 2026 is not that far away. Like, it's going to be here before we know it, and it sure would be nice to see the province pay attention to the issues that matter in this district.
I agree 100%.
Lisa, did you? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I had one follow-up question that is percolating, and it may be an agenda setting item. So through the chair, please direct as required. But I'm just wondering, now that we're responsible for children and families as well, the consideration at Squamish and Valley Cliff in those proposals for more of an early years seamless day, all that kind of, when and how those conversations overlap and Rebecca, now that I say it, it's likely an agenda setting question, so. I'm not, you're nodding.
Yeah,
Yep,
we're
yeah.
happy to teach the session about this.
Yeah,
if I may,
I,
Rebecca, for sure. I think it's a great suggestion because
Yeah.
as we learn more too, as we shifted over to
Mhm.
education and childcare, it's a nice opportunity to share some of the suggestions at the ministry level and what we're doing to accommodate and all those.
yeah,
things.
and knowing how that jigsaw fits together rather than it. Maybe it needs to be in-house and maybe that funding allocation, but anyway. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Rebecca.
That's all right. Cynthia, I see your hand up.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'm just thinking about a couple of years ago, we did, and I think we took it to public consultation, adjusting the boundaries for enrollment. And how does, like, where are we with the possibility of that happening and how does that play into like potentially having this approved?
It's happened.
We've done it.
We've adjusted the boundaries.
They have been adjusted. And so even with that, we're still seeing like minimal
Well,
impact.
That just happened in last year's school enrollment. So that was the
Yeah.
first year of this. So we've done, the ministry asks us to do these other
Okay.
things before they approve the capital project. So we have done
All the legwork.
what they've asked us to
Okay.
do with looking at our catchment boundaries and adjusting where possible. And we have the challenges with the highway splitting our community.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes it really hard to make significant adjustments, but we did minor adjustments to take the pressure off Squamish Elementary.
Yeah.
So that has occurred. So that is in our project request. The updated information that's going into the project request fact sheet will show that we looked at these things,
Okay.
we've done these changes, and there's not much more we can do to relieve the pressure on our elementaries other than this other thing.
Okay, I think that's the part I was
Yeah.
trying to get to. Did we already
Yeah.
show that that part of the
Yeah.
potential fix has already occurred? And
Yes.
we still need more fix?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
We
great.
need a lot
Thanks.
more fix.
A lot more
Thanks.
fix.
Awesome.
Thank you, Cynthia. Were there any other questions? This one, and I thank you,
Small-
Ian, for presenting.
Smallest report, biggest question.
I think we gave this one 10 minutes and so she goes. Okay, so with that, we can move on to item C, the 2023-2024 annual budget and bylaw. Danielle and Elena.
Yeah, so I'll pass it over to Elena here quickly, but just that the board is required to go ahead with the second and third reading of the budget and pass a bylaw for 23-24 budget. So that's due to the ministry for June 30th. We did a first reading of the budget in May, and there were a few changes from the May one that the board had approved. And so I'm going to pass it over to Elena to go over some of those details.
Just a quick point of order, if I may, maybe we'll come back at the end, but we do need a motion for the project capital.
Oh, sorry, maybe we should just do that. Should we just do that now?
Up to the chair.
Yes.
Sorry, I missed that piece. So
Good
there's
catch.
a recommendation there?
That the finance committee recommend the board. What?
Is it happened?
Oh, okay. That the finance committee recommends the board approve. Shouldn't that be recommends?
Don't recommend.
Recommend that.
Okay.
You'll be doing
Sorry.
it in the open board.
That the finance committee recommend the board approves the 2024-2025 5-year major capital plan as presented.
I'm happy to
Thank
second.
you. Thank you. Are there any objections? Okay, seeing and hearing none, then that is accepted. Now we can move on.
Back over to Elena.
Okay, Elena.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for this background. Yes, this is a second and third reading and of annual budget for the year 23-24. So the annual budget, let me share the screen here. So the annual budget presented here is our best estimate for 23-24 school year until students are counted in September. Since the first reading in May, the enrollment has not been changed, and the revenues and expenses have been adjusted based on the most up-to-date information. On May 26th, the ministry announced $1,019,357 of labor settlement and $3,421 of an increase in community link grant. These changes were included in the revenues. Also, here you can see these changes. 1 million of labor settlement is shown here, and community link is slightly higher. This included $61,530 for support staff benefits grant into QP pay equity funding. This operating grant has not yet been announced, but it's ongoing grant that all districts normally $1,633 up. The estimates for special purpose funds surpluses. This resulted in higher carry forwards. Here you can see here. Previously it was 200,000. Now it's 500,000. It resulted in a higher carry forward amounts from prior year. So this appropriated. It was due to the more accurate estimates of what our surpluses would be. It turned out that they're going to be a little bit higher than we had in the first reading budget. So these surpluses are appropriated and they go into revenue, and also our expenses were adjusted accordingly. So overall, all revenues are $1,361,158 higher than in the first reading. Let me show it here. So the total revenue is $73,762,524. And it's 1.3 million higher than we had in the first reading, and 1.4 million higher than we had. Oh, sorry, I apologize. It's incorrect amount. The total revenues are $75,226,271, which is 1.4 million higher than in 22-23 amended budget, and 1.3 million higher than first reading of 23-24 budget. So most of the labor-related funding increases were allocated to the schools. Because of this funding is attributed to school-based staff salary increases as per new collective agreements. So allocations of revenue to schools went up compared to prior reading. And the portion of this labor-related funding also remains under the district until staffing costs can be more accurately estimated for amended annual budget. The special purpose fund surplus carry forward increases were allocated back to educational support cost of the district in this area. So this in the first reading we had almost $1 million less, like now it's $5,777,000, mostly allocated to D3, D4, and D9 areas of educational support programs and initiatives, community link programs and food programs, and also French grant programs. Overall, total expenses are $75,131,620, which is 1.3 million higher than the first reading, 1.4 million higher than current year amended budget. The unallocated contingency is here $94,651, and we are comfortable with this contingency because first of all there are a lot of estimates at this time, and second, the district has already established a minimum required unrestricted operating accumulated surplus amount, surplus levels. So the staffing, if you go to the details and we look at all the areas of the budget, not sure how much time we have to go through each of them. So, but staffing, I can tell, so comparing to first reading, staffing FTE has not changed. And operating expenses has changed to just to match adjusted surpluses. And they were adjusted as follows. In D3 area, which is educational support programs and initiatives, it went up 96,870. In ministry supported career programs. This is dual early childhood educators dual credit funding from the ministry. So in another increase was French grant programs, 30,950,000 up from the first reading. Again, all these changes are due to surpluses, just to match surpluses, to make sure that we spend all surpluses we have and all grants already announced for 23-24 to not carry any surpluses at the end of 23-24 school year. And other little changes were in community link and food programs. Here, again, due to surplus estimate and early learning programs. So this is the budget for 23-24. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Maybe you can just stop sharing for a second so people
Sure,
can see
sure.
online. Thank you.
Lisa, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, you did. Sorry. Not sorry. I just have a couple of little housekeeping grammatical kind of questions. When I was conferring both documents from last meeting and this meeting, I'm just wondering why certain line items move throughout the document. So when I was following along under the operating other current year's revenues, the ministry initiatives for the Feeding Futures Fund moved from the first section down to the bottom section on that first page. And so as I was trying to figure out where these monetary changes were occurring, I was having a hard time. It's just a housekeeping issue. How and why does that line item change?
Good eye, Lisa. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. It's actually the only item has been moved.
Yeah, I was like,
And I can
I saw through my packages. I'm
Very
very
good.
diligent.
You're so diligently looking into differences. So there was no change in the amount. It's just I moved. The reason this fund, the food programs for 22-23 was new funding. And when we started developing this spreadsheet, we just added where we can see fit. But then we realized it's actually a special purpose grant and it should be all together with other special purpose grants down below with French grant, community link, tripartite agreement, and just to see, for the ease of seeing what is the total of special purpose grant, what is the total for other operating grant, what is the total for operating grant. This is the total of the operating grants that we receive based on enrollment. So just to make it more consistent and more logical, so I moved it food programs to other special
Perfect.
purpose.
Thank you for that clarification. I was like, okay, why did it move from one to the other? Where did we put it? What are we? So thank you.
Amount didn't disappear. It's
Yeah.
there.
Okay. Thank you.
April?
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to ask this question the last time, and I'm going to ask it this time because budgets are not really something I've been that, familiar with, but I'm just wondering if you look to the professional development and in-service page on the fatter document, and it's got here 120,000 for, Sea to Sky teachers, professional development. I understand that piece. And then the next one is 110,000. I'm more asking, is this the money that's been allocated and as opposed to how it's used? Is that, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, like I'm just wanting to understand how each of these professional development funds are utilized and where there is the line item for all of those other kinds of professional development that this district has been engaged in over the past several years, because I don't, I know where those first two are obviously organized by those associations. Where is the district professional development funding? That's, I guess, my question.
Oh, where is the district? So I can first address your question about whether it's a spending or funding
Right.
proportion.
Okay.
So this is both.
This is
If we
both.
haven't, like, we have an obligation to, for teachers as per collective agreement, there is a clause saying, there is an article saying that we have to allocate $340 per each FTE based on September 30th number of teachers FTE. And so this funding is allocated annually.
Right.
And if it doesn't get spent, which we were very dramatically affected by COVID, there is very little professional development has been happening. So the surplus went up. So because we allocate every year, but we didn't spend for a few years. And so that represents the amount that we're planning to spend in 23-24. So the teachers, Sea to Sky Teacher Association is part of our financial statements. They're incorporated, their financials are incorporated into our financials. Whatever surpluses they have, we are showing as our restricted surpluses, because we are dedicated to spend those amounts on our professional development for the purposes of funds. It's a little bit different for principals, maybe Chris can tell more about, but because there is no elective agreement, but there is a certain amount that we are dedicated to provide annually for each principal. But the spending and allocation goes the same manner like teachers. So we allocate annually, but we maybe have a little bit more discretion on how we spend there because there is no collective agreement.
And to your question, we find it also under D2 on page. My goodness, my glasses on the page, but D2 as you go forward. It's on the 1 to 2nd page, flip side, D2 is professional development in service. And so you can see all the monies that we put aside for professional development for everyone. So you'll see 645, that's the professional learning workshops at 210, where we're a district that, as you know, heavily invests in our teachers. So, and inquiry projects are there as well, and a bunch of different buckets.
That's
that we
all on the
use.
same page.
So yeah, it's all there. So we $750,000 towards professional development.
Apart from those first two line items.
No, inclusive of
Inclusive of-
120 and 110. Yeah, so $500,000.
And there's probably even more in there. Like my team has professional development, right? You can't see it in here. It's kind of buried,
That's
but there is
And
a lot more.
fills, right, for learning services. So
Okay, so it's all
but the
considered.
210 is the one I think you're thinking about where, when we take our principals, our teachers on visits to other districts, other places to see amazing work being done, to be inspired. That's the big ticket fund right there. To 210. Now, we'll share with the board that we had a conversation because that's been pretty well static for the last couple of years. So you may see an amended, right, the final amended budget where we're going to spend a little bit more because we want to take into consideration those increased costs for travel, for food, for all those pieces. So, we always find the money when we need it. But I think you can anticipate a slight change to that because it's been 210 for quite a while now.
And I'm I have the experience of the, professional development funds at the union office, and you're correct. During COVID, a lot of that money wasn't spent. So I would assume that the same would be true at the district level. So was that money able to be carried forward or did it just disappear into
So
Neverland?
yeah, no, well, I wouldn't say disappear. What I was saying
Yeah,
is we
reallocated
obviously
it
did
somewhere
COVID,
else.
right, because we had those increased costs, especially we readjusted for operations, cost of fuel.
Right,
Utilities.
Oh my goodness, all those pieces, sick leave.
okay, so it just got
Provisions over-
reallocated. It didn't sit over here the way that the professional development fund for the SSTA did.
Yes, the 210
Okay.
does not accumulate over time because
okay.
we reappropriate where we need to take care of other costs. That answer D2.
I guess wanting to. Shouldn't want to because I've seen it, but obviously that is what it's a high priority for me. To invest in those things, so I'm hoping that the money is there and available to continue at the level in which we.
I think it's important for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
So,
I know, agreed.
April, if I may add to what Chris said, so 110,000 allocated to teachers' professional development, and it's not all money that we have. They don't disappear. They are part of our restricted surplus. And there, when I was showing the appropriation of surpluses, 500 was from special purpose fund, but 400 was from operating restricted surplus. And out of those 400, 100 is sitting in operating surplus for teachers' professional development. We just didn't allocate the full amount because we don't believe we would be able to spend as much. We haven't been spending that much. It's our historical, like how much we've been spending per year. But if when we develop or when we work on an amended budget, those surpluses, it may be either added if you have different plans, if you have more specific plans how to spend, or they may be, they always announced and they're showing in our notes to financial statements, they're listed as a line item of our restricted surplus. So that's how much is for professional development for teachers and principals are sitting in our surplus, because it's restricted. They're always showing line by line, unlike like unrestricted surplus, where it's just an amount. So I just wanted also to add that in their D2 professional development and in service budget area, there is another item that is collective agreement driven. It's a support staff paid pro D days. It's a line item, support staff and in service 654, 655. This is also driven by the collective agreement and they're allocated annually, and 2 pro D days for 2 out of our 7 pro D days are support staff paid pro D days. And this is the amount that's going to be spent.
Thank you.
Lisa, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I think part of the confusion too, if I may, April, may have been that when you were talking about the budget before us, at certain points, it was said 2023-24. And I think some of these numbers are from the 2022-2023 that you may just be,
Right.
yeah, looking at 2 different carts. And we're right now looking at what are we spending now and how is that going to impact the budget for moving forward? Is that a correct paraphrase?
Exactly.
Is that
yes.
okay?
Yes,
Sorry.
exactly. Thank you.
So,
Okay, was there more? I don't see or hear any other questions. Elena, did you have more to report on?
Parents, sorry, what are you saying?
Do you have anything else on Lena?
No, that's it. I'm waiting for questions if any.
No, that's everything, Rebecca. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a recommendation. I know, she's waving at you guys.
Sorry, interrupted, waiting for recommendation.
Sorry.
sorry, one question. Any changes to this one? This is the annual budget, the actual,
Is that what's in the attachment?
yeah.
No, everything that's there, there's no.
Okay, no
Changes.
changes to this one. Okay. Okay, then I can move that the Finance Committee recommend the Board of Education approve the 2023-2024 annual budget as presented.
Thank you, Lisa. A second for that? Okay.
Second. Oh,
Thank you, Cynthia. All right, any objections?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hearing none, then do we have any questions of clarification from the public?
7.
Let me just double check.
There's 12 of you guys.
Riley, Mike.
No questions.
Okay, then I We have completed the business of this agenda and we're adjourned. And I think our next meeting's starting at 2:15, a committee of the whole.
That's right.
All right, so we'll see you guys in 20 minutes.
Thanks,
Yeah, see
Rebecca.
Thank you.
Hi, Riley.
It's in my ear, so he can't hear you.
Bye, Riley.
I'll say bye to you.